By the way, it's me, Paula Arsalakayan, and for today's vlog, I compiled videos inaccurate to the background and history of Kodak's rise and fall, and then followed by its are the strategies that they should have done in solving the problems that they face. So without further much ado, let's get into the video.
For nearly a century, Kodak completely owned the nostalgia market.
Oh yeah, you got so much style with that silly old smile. Come on, get you with a Kodak kiss.
Any memorable moment, from a child's first steps to a wedding, was branded a Kodak moment. But recently, a Kodak moment has become, let's say, less nostalgic.
At some point, I think, became a crypto company, and now apparently it's a pharmaceutical company.
In 2020, the American film giant has made headlines for its foray into, of all things, pharmaceuticals, specifically to treat COVID-19 with the help of a $765 million US government loan. And if you think that's kind of odd, you're not alone.
Just so many weird themes of America today, I think, are wrapped into this story, which is why it's so fascinating.
$765 million loan for Kodak to begin producing pharmaceuticals.
Turn another, it's a Trump story.
They're doing something that's a different field, and it's a field that they've really hired some of the best people in the world.
Governor Cuomo's involved.
It will create 300 new jobs.
And the story of how Kodak is trying to become a pharmaceutical company is just as strange as the announcement itself. This is how Kodak went from selling nostalgia to making drugs.
Kodak is an iconic American company. It once symbolized everything that was great about America.
For the better part of a century, Kodak could be considered the closest thing to a monopoly without ever becoming one, and that was no accident. Founded in 1888 by George Eastman, Kodak was born with one mission: to revolutionize the world of picture taking.
He wanted the camera to be as ubiquitous and as easy to use as the pencil, and he adopted a business strategy that says to the customer, you push the button and we do the rest.
The rest would turn out to be an extremely aggressive business strategy.
Look at what happened in the first 40 or 50 years of the 20th century.
Scale was the way to win in this. There were a lot of little camera companies and a lot of photo companies and photo finishing companies that sprang up.
He got into the camera business by buying a whole bunch of camera companies that not always wanted to get bought. Typically, that doesn't happen by just soft management. That happens pretty tough management.
By acquiring these companies, Kodak was able to not only dominate the camera market, but the film market as well.
One of the reasons it became so powerful is that Eastman understood either sell the cameras cheaply or give them away, because we're going to make all our money on film and photo processing. And it worked on so many levels.
Everything was vertically integrated. You bought your Kodak camera, where you put Kodak film inside, and
if you brought your film in to get it developed, you brought it to a Kodak store.
throughout much of the 20th century, Kodak could do no wrong. Every product launch, from cameras like the Brownie and the Instamatic, to engineering feats in film like Kodachrome and Ektachrome, were a hit, even creeping into pop culture. Kodak didn't just set the tone for the film and camera industry, it was the film and camera industry.
In the mid-70s, 1976, Kodak owned 95% of the film market and 85% of the camera market in the United States.
Employment peaked in the 80s at like 150,000. This wasn't just a Fortune 500 company, this was a Fortune 50 company. It was a brand that everybody recognized, and it was dominant.
But Kodak didn't just do photography. Because of the chemicals used in film, they also developed blood analyzers, x-rays, pharmaceutical manufacturing, and copiers, just to name a few. What Kodak didn't know at the time was an invention by one of its own engineers in 1976 would eventually lead to the organization's demise. Kodak engineer Steven Sasson invented the prototype that would eventually become the digital camera.
It was a feasibility demonstration. If you saw pictures of it, it was obviously not a commercial product.
Kodak saw the writing on the wall, that their days, while still decades away, were ultimately numbered as a film business.
I began to look at something Gordon Moore had come out with just a couple of years before that, and it became known as Moore's Law. Moore's Law said that the capacity of transistors on an integrated circuit was going to double every 18 months. We were able to conclude in 1978 that by about 2008, consumer electronic imaging ought to overtake traditional photography.
At the time, Kodak wasn't worried. It had a leg up on the competition and had plenty of time to prepare. Dealing with major shifts in technology that quickly dated their research, the transition to digital signaled the beginning of Kodak's decline.
During the early 80s, recognizing this transformation was coming, Kodak set up an internal school where we sent chemists and chemical engineers to in-house school to turn them into electrical engineers. That turned out to be not very successful. If you just look at the earnings statement of the company, you'd have to say, what are we doing this for? Because at this point, they're still making money hand over fist.
There was kind of an ingrained fear of cannibalizing that core business, of killing the golden goose. They were a monopoly in film, but they couldn't stop disruptive technologies, from coming along and unseating their business.
It's sort of the classic innovator's dilemma problem. If you have this great cash cow, which is your film camera business, and you're one of the dominant players there, you're reluctant to totally disrupt it yourself.
By the time the 90s rolled around, Kodak's push into digital was in full force. CEO George Fisher, who headed Kodak from 1993 to 1999, pumped $2 billion into research and development for digital technology.
They had this event in San Francisco. It was March 28, 1995. They called it the big event. The Chicago Tribune, I remember, they had their headline was The Big Gamble. And it was Fisher's big announcement that Kodak was moving full steam ahead into digital.
And each attempt was a flop. Whether it was the massively overpriced DCS-100, the photo CD that could hold up to 25 images, which was quickly outpaced by the growing capacity of hard drives, and the DC-20, an incredibly cheap camera that everyone agreed took awful pictures.
The disc camera was a disaster. They called it the adventure of the incredibly shrinking negative, and it was so small that the images were horrible.
The 90s were also a time when Kodak started spinning off its other businesses to pay down its debt, selling its entire office imaging business, its digital printer and copier division, and turning its chemical division into Eastman Chemical. In 2003, under new CEO Antonio Perez, who joined from Hewlett-Packard, the company once again made the claim that Kodak would become the leader in digital cameras.
Kodak is back. They're taking this digital thing to a level undreamed of.
They learned early on that the devices weren't the thing. It was what the devices allowed you to do. It was the follow-on business. All the ancillary stuff is where they made the money. They didn't have the right kind of culture to sell cameras and digital cameras in a frenetic, low barrier to entry market and to beat back everybody else.
Compared with cameras that require film, margins related to the use of digital cameras are a disaster. Film generates a profit of as much as 70 cents on the dollar. Digital imaging might make a nickel.
It's like that old joke about, we're losing money on every unit we make, but we'll make it up on volume.
In 1987, the company employed 145,000 people at its enormous facility in Rochester. 20 years later, in 2020, that number has fallen all the way down to 4,900, and it keeps on shrinking.
I would like to take this time to answer a few important questions about Kodak in light of our decision to file for reorganization.
With the failure to successfully pivot to digital complete on January 19, 2012, Kodak filed for bankruptcy.
This once great company files for bankruptcy, and now they're trying to build with whatever you can. So you get Jim Conenza comes in as the chairman at that point, is sort of their standard bearer.
While this was the end of Kodak as mainly a film business, Kodak emerged from bankruptcy in 2013 and started the first of its many pivots.
Well, some investors are crazy about cryptocurrencies right now.
Kodak is launching its own cryptocurrency, Kodak Coin. The cryptocurrency system will allow photographers to register work that they can license and then receive payment.
It was coming at a time where it seemed like everybody was announcing a coin as a way to raise a bunch of money because there was so much mania. And so you have Kodak, which is a publicly traded company. A lot of the crypto coin ideas didn't have a public company to latch onto. So you attach this idea to a public company and all of a sudden the stock price soars.
In one day of trading, shares soared 120%, going from $3.10 to $10. But it wouldn't last.
It was widely lampooned, I think, by the press. I think the BBC called it one of the worst ideas to come out of CES or something like that at the time. It was during legit cryptomania.
From the peak of the announcement of Kodak Coin until early 2020, Kodak's stock price fell from $36.88 to around $2.70. Until
shares of the company soared yesterday after news that the U.S. government awarded the firm $765 million in loans.
They just need to become a cannabis company and a meat-free company, and then they've really got the trifecta of all things millennial and Gen Z.
Most people heard about the Kodak loan on, July 28th. We have President Trump himself talking about the $765 million loan. We have Peter Navarro, the trade representative, going on TV talking about it, and the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, thanking the president for it. That all of a sudden wakes everybody up in the world to this.
And just like with the announcement of Kodak Coin,
the share price goes crazy. It tops out at $60 when it had been trading around $3 for months and months.
For a moment, it was actually a feel-good story, a once great American company having its second act.
There's a ton of media attention on it. Everybody's asking why this company, can Kodak really do it? Why are there all these strange things about how they handled the announcement? And then suddenly you have everybody investigating.
Regulators look into improprieties, allegations of insider trading.
The trading volume for Kodak shot up right before the deal.
Kodak, after the announcement comes out, files that just before the announcement came out, they had granted options to a bunch of their executives, which would seem to give them access, the ability to buy shares at a low price, dated to before the share price really surged.
Kodak said it made the mistake of not placing an embargo on the press release, and without the embargo, journalists were quick to report the news, which impacted trading. The source of the loan was also a big area of interest. It was given out by the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, or the DFC.
This is about investing in a company that is going to not only produce 25% of the generic pharmaceuticals that we need, the ingredients in the United States, but it's going to be financially sustainable for the long term. So they had a big advance purchase order, and we were able to give them that money, the $765 million, collateralized on that. So I knew we're going to build a brand, we're going to make Americans safer, and we're going to make money for the American taxpayer.
Randomly, Adam Bowler is Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law's former summer roommate. So it's very Trump world. So you have the DFC, it's this outward-facing body focused on international development, but it seemed like, a friendly entity in Trump world.
While a review commissioned by Kodak says CEO Jim Continenza's stock options did not violate internal policies, the SEC investigation is ongoing, and the damage, in the eyes of some, has already been done.
What happened at Kodak was probably the dumbest decisions made by executives in corporate history.
Peter Navarro certainly has plenty of reason to try and distance himself from this deal. When he was announcing it, he was trying to take all the credit in the world, and this was really his baby, trying to shepherd it through and encouraging the government to give Kodak this loan. The underlying question here is, was Kodak some sort of pump and dump scam? Or by shooting the share price up with this loan announcement, did Kodak or anyone around Kodak unfairly profit off just the share price skyrocketing alone?
In a statement, Kodak said, based on an exhaustive review of law and facts, our lawyers have concluded that Kodak and its officers, directors, and senior management did not violate the securities regulations or other relevant laws, engage in a breach of fiduciary duty, or violate any of Kodak's internal policies and procedures. So while Kodak is in trouble both as a company and as a company defining its identity, it doesn't necessarily mean that they made the wrong decisions. Some say that companies just aren't always meant to be on top.
It's not obvious that companies exist forever. The notion that a company has to exist and if it doesn't exist, somebody failed, not accurate. The function of management is not to keep the company in business, it's to create wealth. If you don't have a balance where the revenue exceeds the cost, you eventually go out of business.
This isn't just an iconic company. This isn't just a corporate tragedy. It's a piece of America that's being lost, forever.
Hi everyone, my name is Leena Patel, founder of Global Impact Systems, helping bring the sandbox into the boardroom. What does that mean? It means bringing that playfulness, that sense of adventure, that creativity, that innovation, the ability to just come up with new ideas without limitations, without boundaries, the way that we were able to do as a kid. Bring that into our work environment so that we can be leaders, be on the forefront of our industries, thinking ahead to what our people need, to what our industry needs, and really serve our people in a bigger and brighter way. And today I want to talk about leading change, because this is the #1 challenge that leaders, that businesses are dealing with today. How to adapt, how to lead change effectively, and how to respond to the marketplace so that they don't get left behind. I understand that it's a challenge for a lot of people and can cause such chaos and disruption in our environments. It can either completely take us out, it can cause us to retreat in some way, or if we create the right conditions, it can truly spark innovation. It can generate an abundance of new ideas. And so that's what I want to help you and serve you with today. And I know that if you have a roadmap of how to do this, that you can be way more successful and more productive and generate so much more within your company than you already currently are. And let's look at some of the reasons how change can be holding us back. And if you don't know anything about my story, I grew up just change anchored into my DNA from a very early age. My grandfather was my earliest mentor from the age of 4, and he was mentored by Gandhi. I learned from somebody who was right there in the trenches what it takes to create change on a really global level. What does it take to charge people with a new idea, to enroll people into something? How do you change things? How do you turn things on their head? And one of the things that I really learned from my grandfather is that we need to be so responsive to what is going on in the environment around us. And I think this is the biggest mistake that businesses, that leaders are making today, is that they're thinking that the way that it has got them to the success that they have today is going to continue to serve them in the future. And that's truly not the case. I want to give you some examples of some companies that have done this both successfully and unsuccessfully. So let's start with the unsuccessful ones so that we have some context for this. So I'll give you a couple of examples. I'll give you 3 examples. One is Kodak. They were the leaders in digital camera technology. And what they didn't realize is that customers wanted to interact with cameras in a completely different way. And missing this, other competitors came in and Kodak were taken out of the game. Another example is Blockbuster. Again, just leaders at that time where people were buying videotapes, going into a store to watch a DVD. Netflix came along and changed the landscape. Blockbuster, again, not responsive to what customers and consumers wanted. In fact, Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix several times and they declined them because they just kind of dismissed them as this small bag of fries. And we all know the success that Netflix is today in terms of innovation, in terms of how they're bringing entertainment and education so much more into our living rooms. And the third example I want to give is Smith Corona. So these guys were back in the day, these were the leaders in In typewriting, before computers, that was, it was this model where you literally just kind of clicked on your, like, just very much like a keyboard. But as we moved to that model of technology, of a computer, again, they were just like, this isn't really going to catch on. This is going to be a fad. This isn't going to really change the industry. And they tested it out a little bit for about a year, and it didn't kind of work. And their competitor, Remington, tested it out, and they had a big failure. And so they were convinced that that's not going to change the industry in a dramatic way. They were too big, they were too powerful for it to take them out. Well, of course, they were wrong. The CEO, at the moment that he stepped down, was so convinced that the typewriter was going to stick around. And 3 years later, the company went bankrupt. So there are countless examples in history that teach us that if we don't stay ahead of what's going on, if we don't look at what the marketplace is revealing to us, if we don't see the signals and the signs, and if we don't respond to them, we're gonna suffer. Our business is going to suffer. Let me give you an example of a company and a leader that I think has done it really well. I've known her for a very long time. She's a dear friend, has been a long-time client of mine. Her name's Celine Dion. And back in the early 2000s, this is when she was living in Canada, she invited her friends and her family and people, close circle of people that she worked with, to Las Vegas to come and celebrate her and her husband renewing their wedding vows. And as part of that, I think it was a 3-day event, we went to see a Cirque du Soleil show. And that sparked the idea in her of creating a show that involved dance, that involved artists sort of flying in these imaginary worlds. There was creation, there was play, there was innovation, and it was all wrapped around a concert experience in one venue versus the touring culture, which was very predominant in the music industry at that time. And it's an idea that's never been done before. Industry peers mocked her because at that time, the only people that came to Vegas were the artists that were on their way out of their careers, and they're just sort of looking for a place to quietly retire. Not somebody who was at the height of their career, somebody that was young, that was fresh, that was hip, that was cool. Businesses took a chance on her. They built the Coliseum for $90 million, and it changed the face of Las Vegas. In fact, it's changed the entertainment world as we know it. Because if you've been to Las Vegas, you'll know that a lot of top artists now come and have a residency here. Mariah Carey, Cher, Britney Spears, Elton John, and so many others. So what she did successfully and what she continues to do, and I see this not on a bigger picture scale, this is how we see it from an audience point of view, but within the company as well, is looking forward, looking at what hasn't been done before, looking at ideas that we can borrow from other industries and how we can implement that into our own to create incredible change. So I encourage you to think outside the box, to be in what I call the sandbox, just the spirit of play where you're looking to connect dots in different ways. That's what innovation is. And if you can develop that skill within yourself, within your people, within the people that surround you in your business, you're going to be successful. So I want to leave you with just one tip today that's really going to take you on that journey to creating the culture of innovation, for developing your people, generating great ideas, delivering great products and services, and really serving the world in a big way. And that's this. If you are a big company, I encourage you to think small. You see so many big companies, the Fortune 50s and the Fortune 100s, the temptation is to get stuck in the belief of how great you are. And you miss that these smaller, nimble entrepreneurs or little startups are more agile, they're more responsive, and more kind of in touch with what's going on in the marketplace. These people can come in, and because of their nimbleness, because of their agility, they can take you out. We're in a world and living in a world and an economy where things are changing so fast that when we believe our own brilliance and we believe in our own power, we've taken our eye off the ball. So if you're big, think small. Now, if you are small, my advice is to think big. If you're small, think big. Just because you're small, it doesn't mean that you don't have, certainly you don't have the budgets and the resources of these bigger companies. but use the fact that you're connected with the marketplace. You're right there, like you understand what's going on in social media because you're right there. You understand when Pokemon Go becomes the latest craze that people are looking for a way to interact with the world in a more dynamic way. And if we kind of stay behind our corporate veil and look at it and just go, oh, that's this young person thing, or that's this world of social media and apps and games that I don't understand, we're missing the point. We're missing how people want to interact and engage with material. So you have an advantage. It doesn't matter what size you are, whether you're big and dominating your industry right now, or if you're small and unknown. It's how you think. It's how responsive you are to the marketplace. So I hope this has served you. If you've liked this video, please go ahead and share your comments so that I get your feedback and I can certainly respond to your questions as well. And go ahead and subscribe to my channel, my YouTube channel, so that you can get more cool videos like this. I look forward to serving you and to see you again soon.
Hi! In this video, you will learn about another technique called the 5-step problem-solving approach. This technique also helps businesses solve the problems they face on a daily basis. Here are the 5 steps involved in this technique. State the problem clearly and specifically. Write down how it happened, when it happened, where, etc. Think of 2 or more strategies to find out what the root causes of the problems are. Choose the best strategies from the ones you have mentioned in step 2. Try out the strategy and determine if that is really the root cause of the problem. Measure your final result. If your problem has disappeared, then wow, it is done. If not, then go back to step 2 and choose another strategy and try it out. Keep doing this till you find the root cause and have eliminated the problem. Analyzing and solving problems are things we face every day. You can follow one or more of the above techniques in both your business and daily life experiences. Be certain that this technique, as well as many others, is a method for making problem solving simpler and more fun.